you looking to up your real estate investing game? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Sub 2 Deals Show with your host, Sub 2 expert William Tingle.
Hey, Sub-2ers, this is William Tingle of Sub2Deals.com. I'd like to welcome you to this episode of the Sub 2 Deals Show, where we talk about all things subject to and some other real estate things from time to time, but always related to the business that you do. Today's topic is what to do if the seller changes his mind. You know, from time to time, I'll get this question: what do I do if the seller wants to back out of a deal? And it seems like almost every time I see this discussed on Facebook or a news group, there are all these people giving advice to the investor to, when you get a deal, make sure you run down to the courthouse and record a memorandum of agreement so the seller can't change their minds. Listen, I get it. You market, you ran ads, you put out bandit signs, you make cold calls, you do all of these different things to attract sellers, and hey, it worked. Okay, you get a seller, you negotiate, you sign up a deal, and maybe you're already looking forward to a really sweet payday and some really nice monthly cash flow. Heck, maybe you've already spent that money in your mind. And then the seller calls and says, listen, I made a mistake and I want to cancel the deal. Well, now what? Well, for me, that really just depends on a few things. Have you just signed it up in the last few days and maybe you only have a little time in the deal? Maybe you call the bank and you put out a few signs to attract some buyers. Maybe you put it up on your website or sent an email to your buyers list or added the message to your recording for your 24-hour call line. But you really haven't ordered title or gotten any inspections. You really don't have any real money out of pocket on getting the deal closed. In those cases, the first thing I would try to do is just talk to the seller. See if the deal can be saved. Is there some specific fear he has that makes him want to cancel? Maybe he's spoken to someone who told him, hey, those real estate investors are all scammers and you ought to stay away from that stuff. Hey, maybe he has reservations about being on the loan for an extended period of time and that's keeping him awake at night. Maybe Aunt Sally, his rich Aunt Sally, called him up and said, hey, Joe, let me help you with those back payments and let you keep your house. Maybe he's really excited about that. Maybe he's just changed his mind. Maybe he was going to move and changed his mind, or even the job he thought he had in another town fell through. It could be a million things, and you really just don't know unless you speak to him. In almost every case, no matter what, my answer would be just to let it go. You don't want to be tied to someone for the next however many years who really didn't want to do the deal with you in the first place, do you? Well, of course not. And remember, helping people is a big part of our business. Do you really feel like it's helping someone to force them to do something that they really don't want to do? And maybe they're even scared to do. If all you've put in is a little time and maybe just a little bit of money, the best thing you can do is just wish the seller well and let them off the hook. Part ways politely. Remind them that if things don't work out, you would still love to talk with them about buying their house, and just let it go. Move on to the next thing. You know, the key to this is really just having enough deals in the pipeline that you can easily move on to the next deal just like nothing happened. Don't ever count on that one particular deal that you have closing, because stuff happens. Now, if your conversation turns out that the seller just decided they didn't want to do the deal and maybe they even have a really nasty attitude with you, maybe you'll want to ask them for reimbursement of any real costs that you've incurred and maybe a fair rate for your time. Will you get it? Well, most likely not, but you can always ask. And what you do after that is really up to you. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of the options that you have as an investor if you decide not to let it go.
The Sub 2 Deals Show with your host, Sub 2 expert William Tingle. We'll be right back. Have you ever had a seller give you a house? It's a pretty awesome experience. If a seller wanted to give you a house today, would you know what needed to be done to make the deal happen? Would you like to learn how? The Ultimate Sub 2 Guidebook, We'll show you exactly what you need to get those deeds and sell those houses with seller financing. Join the thousands of other investors across the country who learned how to get the deed with the Ultimate Sub-2 Guidebook. Get the Ultimate Sub-2 Guidebook today at sub2deals.com. Back to the show, the Sub-2 Deals Show, with your host, Sub-2 expert William Tingle.
Hey, we're back, Sub-2ers. We're talking today about what do we do if the seller decides to back out of a deal after we've got it under contract. When we left for the break, we were talking about what some of the options might be if you decide not to let it go, which I got to be honest with you, in 99.9% of the cases, that's my recommendation. Especially when you're dealing with sub-2 type transactions, you really just don't want to try to force a seller to go through with the deal. There are just too many things that could go wrong. But let's say that you decided for whatever reason not to let it go. What are your options? Well, number one, if you have a really strong contract, you can probably sue for specific performance. And what that really means is that the judge can force them to go through with the sale. But you really need to think about it and decide if that's something that you want to do and if it's even worth doing it. Hiring an attorney and going to court, it just ain't cheap. And there's no guarantee that you'll win, especially, again, if you're talking about taking a deed and forcing someone to stay on the note for a period of time. You can probably expect to spend at least $5,000 and maybe up to $20,000, depending on how long the case drags out and the cost of the attorneys, just trying to force a seller to sell. And do you really want to be that guy in the courtroom? Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Smith was in foreclosure and he called me off of one of my bandit signs, and I went out and talked with him and we struck a deal, and he decided he didn't want to do it because he was worried about staying on his loan, and I want you to force him to sell me his house where I can make a profit and he can still stay on the hook for the note. I don't think you want to be in that kind of position. I don't really think I would want to be the plaintiff in that case. And besides that, what do you think the condition of the house would be if the judge forced him to sell to you and once you got him out and got it? Should that seller be forced to sell to you? I don't think so. I don't think that's a good idea. Now, a second option, a liquidated damages clause. You could have that in your contract where if the seller decides to terminate the agreement between the time you sign it up and the close of escrow, there's a built-in dollar amount that they would compensate you for. And that's always a possibility. You could also have a memorandum of agreement drafted and recorded, effectively clouding the title. Whenever they decide to sell, depending on the title company, they may have to come back to you and either pay you to go away or close around it. And that can happen. You know, I've used a memorandum of agreement twice in 20 years. And in both cases, it accomplished what we set out to accomplish, but neither one of those were cases where I was forcing a sub-2 seller to pay me. So those are my thoughts on how to handle a seller that's backing out of a deal. You know, in almost every case, it's best for everyone concerned to just walk away and move on to the next thing. You know, even if you have a couple $100 in the deal, don't throw good money after bad trying to sue someone and force them to sell. In all likelihood, it's really going to be more trouble than it's worth. Wish your seller the best of luck and mean it. And expand your energy on sellers who want to play ball. You don't have the time nor the money to just sit in front of a judge and explain why a seller should be forced to sell you their house. Doing that is not going to serve you or give you the reputation that you really want to have in your community. In the time you spend fighting someone over this, you could easily do multiple deals and make much, much more money. It's just wasted time and wasted energy. The lesson here is that there are tens of thousands of houses out there. Why would you want to sue someone who has changed their mind? Just go find another deal. Have enough deals in the pipeline so that it doesn't matter. If you'd like to learn more about getting the deed, join us at our Facebook Subject to Real Estate Forum at sub2forum.com, or you can always contact me at william@sub2deals.com. Thanks for listening. Now, go out there and buy some houses.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Sub 2 Deals Show with William Tingle. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe. And for more great content and to stay up to date, visit sub2deals.com and on Facebook at Sub 2 Deals. We'll catch you next time.